The alarm blared through Orbital Hub 7's corridors at precisely 3:47 a.m. station time. Daniel Carter was already awake, sitting in the fire station's break room, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. 15 years of fighting fires on Earth had trained his body to wake up minutes before emergencies. His fellow firefighters called it his sixth sense. He didn't believe in such things, but he had learned to trust his instincts. The station's AI voice echoed through the room. Emergency alert. Fire detected in Solarian Quarter, Section 12. All emergency response teams report immediately. Daniel was on his feet before the announcement finished. He grabbed his modified fire suit from its storage pod and began suiting up with practiced efficiency. The suit was a hybrid of human and alien technology, tough enough to withstand extreme temperatures while remaining flexible enough for human mobility. Through the clear walls of the fire station, he could see the alien members of his team already gathering. The Viracs, tall creatures with iridescent scales, stood nervously at a distance from the equipment room. Their species had evolved on a cold world, and their natural instinct was to flee from any heat source stronger than their mild sun. The Excelarians, despite their advanced technology, weren't much better with fire. Their crystalline bodies were particularly vulnerable to thermal shock. Lisa Martinez, his human partner, jogged into the room while pulling her hair into a tight bun. "Got anything on the sensors yet?" she asked, moving to her own suit storage. Daniel checked the holographic display floating above his wrist computer. Plasma fire. From the readings. Probably one of their energy experiments gone wrong again. He shook his head. Never understood why a species so afraid of fire keeps playing with plasma. The station's fire response protocols required at least 4 team members for any serious fire. As Daniel looked around the room, he could see the alien crew members shifting uncomfortably. Their body language might be different from humans, but fear looked the same on any species. "Chief, we have a problem," Zixtal, their Virac safety officer, called out. His scales had taken on a pale blue color, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Our biological imperatives. We cannot approach a plasma fire. The heat signatures are too similar to our ancient predators." Daniel nodded, understanding but not sharing their fear. Humans were unique among the station's species. They had evolved alongside fire, mastered it, used it to forge their civilization. What terrified other species was, to humans, a tool to be respected but not feared. "Lisa and I will handle it," Daniel said, checking his partner's suit seals with practiced hands. "You monitor from the safe zone and keep the evacuation routes clear." The station's walls trembled slightly, and new alert indicators flashed across their screens. The fire was spreading faster than predicted. Daniel could hear the panic in the station AI's voice as it announced evacuations in the surrounding sections. They moved through the station's corridors quickly, their boots magnetic locked to the floor in case artificial gravity failed. The normal crowds of aliens, tourists, traders, diplomats, and residents, were flowing in the opposite direction, guided by glowing emergency paths in the walls. Many of them stared at the 2 humans heading toward the danger everyone else was fleeing. As they approached Section 12, the air grew noticeably warmer despite their suits' cooling systems. Through the reinforced windows, Daniel could see the distinctive blue-green glow of a plasma fire. It danced and swirled in ways that normal fire never did, reaching out with tendrils that seemed almost alive. Getting readings off the scale, Lisa reported, her voice steady despite the situation. "Whatever they were experimenting with, it's not in any of our databases." Daniel smiled slightly. Unknown fires were nothing new to him. Every fire was unique, had its own personality. Whether it was a warehouse fire in Chicago or an alien plasma fire in space, the basics remained the same. Find the source, control the spread, protect life and property. "Just like old times," he said, checking his equipment one final time. "Ready?" Lisa nodded, and together they stepped through the emergency airlock into Section 12. The real work was about to begin, and Daniel felt the familiar calm settle over him. The focus that had kept him alive through countless fires on Earth and in space. Whatever this fire was, whatever alien technology had spawned it, they would face it the way humans always had, with courage, skill, and the determination to protect others, even those whose instincts told them to run. The heat hit them like a wall as they entered Section 12. Even through their advanced suits, Daniel and Lisa could feel the intensity of the plasma fire. The emergency lights cast an eerie glow through the smoke, creating strange shadows that danced across the curved walls of the station. "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to a twisted piece of equipment in the corner. Solarian energy converter, completely melted. She ran her scanner over the wreckage. Never seen one fail like this before. Daniel moved carefully through the room, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. The Excelarian corridor was different from the human sections. The walls were covered in crystalline growths that normally sparkled with stored energy. Now those same crystals were melting, releasing strange colors into the air. Their radios crackled with Zixel's worried voice. "The crystals are reaching critical temperature. When Solarian power crystals melt, they release substances that are not compatible with most life forms." In simple terms, Daniel asked, continuing to move forward. "Poison gas," Lisa translated, checking her suit's atmospheric seals again. "And the regular air filters won't catch it." Through the smoke, they could see several Xelarians trapped behind a wall of plasma fire. Their crystalline bodies flickered with distress patterns, a sign of their extreme fear. The aliens were literally frozen in place, their natural defense mechanism working against them in this crisis. Their biology, Lisa explained as they worked. When Solarians feel intense fear, their crystalline structure partially freezes. It protected them from predators on their home world. But here it's going to get them killed, Daniel finished. He had seen this before. Every species brought their own instincts and fears to space, but sometimes those ancient survival mechanisms became deadly liabilities in this new environment. The station's AI announced over the speakers, "Warning, toxic crystal emissions detected. All non-emergency personnel must evacuate adjacent sections immediately." Daniel looked at the scattered equipment around the room, his mind working quickly. The Xelarians had been conducting some kind of energy experiment. That much was clear. But they had panicked when it went wrong, their fear response kicking in at the worst possible moment. "Lisa, remember that warehouse fire in Houston? The one with the chemical storage?" She nodded, already understanding where he was going. "Similar setup. We can't put out the plasma fire directly, but we can contain it and create a safe path." They began working in perfect sync, the result of countless hours training together. While other species marvel at how humans could function in such dangerous conditions, Daniel and Lisa saw it differently. Humans hadn't conquered their fears. They had learned to work with them, to use the adrenaline and heightened awareness that came with danger. Using their modified equipment, they began creating a corridor through the plasma fire. It was demanding work, requiring constant adjustments as the alien fire responded in unpredictable ways. The Xelarian crystals continued to melt around them, releasing more toxic gas into the air. Humans, one of the trapped Xelarians, managed to communicate through their universal translator. "You must leave. Our biology. We cannot move. The fire, it is our natural death." "Not today it isn't," Daniel replied firmly. He had heard similar things before, from people trapped in burning buildings on Earth who had given up hope. "Your biology says freeze. Our biology says fight. Today, we're doing it our way." Lisa was already setting up their portable force field generators, creating a safe tunnel through the fire. The technology was a mixture of human practical engineering and alien science. Not elegant, but effective, just like humanity itself. The trapped Xelarians watched in what seemed to be amazement as the two humans worked steadily through conditions that their species considered unsurvivable. Their crystalline bodies began to flicker with new patterns, not fear this time, but something that looked almost like hope. "That's the thing about humans," Lisa said as they worked. "We're too stubborn to accept impossible situations. Now, let's show these aliens how Earth's firefighters handle a tough day at work." The station's emergency sirens changed their tone, switching to a deeper, more urgent sound that Daniel had hoped never to hear. The AI's voice came through their comms, its usual calm replaced by programmed panic. "Critical alert. Fire approaching antimatter containment units. Station-wide evacuation now in effect." Daniel and Lisa had just finished creating a safe passage for the trapped Xilarians. The aliens moved slowly through the protective corridor, their crystalline bodies still showing signs of stress, but no longer completely frozen by fear. "Chief Sullivan to all personnel." Amanda's voice cut through the chaos. "We have 15 minutes before the fire reaches the containment units. All emergency teams must evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, all teams must evacuate." Lisa checked her sensors and looked at Daniel. "She's right. If that fire reaches the antimatter storage, the whole station goes up. We need to move." But Daniel was staring at the station schematics floating above his wrist display. 15 minutes isn't enough time. There are still over 300 civilians in the nearby sections who won't make it to the escape pods. Through their helmet cameras, they could see the other emergency teams already pulling back. The Varax and Xilarian crews were programmed by millions of years of evolution to flee from such danger. Even their most highly trained emergency workers couldn't override that instinct when faced with a fire of this magnitude. "Carter, Martinez, I need verbal confirmation of evacuation." Amanda's voice came through again, more urgent this time. Daniel looked at his partner. After years of working together, they could read each other's thoughts in situations like this. Lisa nodded slightly. She was thinking the same thing. "Chief," Daniel responded, "we're staying. The fire's spreading along the power conduits. If we can cut off its path to the antimatter storage, we can buy enough time for a full evacuation." "That's a negative, Carter. The risk is too high. Those conduits were designed by the Xilarians. We don't fully understand how they work. But we understand fire," Lisa cut in, "and we understand how to fight it. Human firefighters have been doing this since we first tamed flames in caves." They could hear Amanda's frustration through the comms. As a station chief, she had to follow protocols. As a human, she understood exactly what they were doing and why they had to do it. The last of the trapped Xilarians passed through their safe corridor. One of them stopped, its crystalline surface flickering with complex patterns. "We do not understand," it communicated. "Your bodies are more fragile than ours. Heat that merely paralyzes us would kill you. Yet you stay." Daniel checked his equipment while responding. Humans learned long ago that there are things more important than personal safety. Sometimes you have to stand your ground, even when everything inside you says to run. The Xilarian's patterns shifted to something new. Perhaps respect, perhaps confusion. Then it joined its companions in retreating to the evacuation zones. Lisa was already moving deeper into the affected area, her scanners mapping the spread of the plasma fire. "The main power conduits run through Section 14, she reported. "If we can reach the junction box, we might be able to redirect the energy flow." The station shuddered around them as more systems failed. Through the reinforced windows, they could see escape pods launching into space, carrying hundreds of aliens to safety. The evacuation was proceeding quickly, but not quickly enough. 10 minutes to containment breach, the AI announced. Daniel took a deep breath inside his helmet. The heat was getting worse, and their suits were operating at their limits. But humans had always had a special relationship with fire. They were the only known species to run toward it rather than away from it. "Well," he said to Lisa, managing a small smile despite the situation, "we always wanted to make history. Let's show the galaxy why humans never gave up their firefighting skills, even after we reached the stars." Together, they moved deeper into the burning station, while behind them, Alien crews watched in astonishment as two members of a primitive species demonstrated why humanity had earned its place among the stars. As Daniel and Lisa pushed deeper into the burning station, memories of Earth's firefighting history filled Daniel's mind. He remembered his grandfather's stories about the Great Chicago Fire, about how humans had learned and adapted after every major disaster. Now, in the depths of space, those lessons were more valuable than ever. The station's walls groaned under the stress of the spreading plasma fire. Through their reinforced visors, they could see the strange beauty of the flames, colors that didn't exist in normal fires, patterns that seemed to defy physics itself. 8 minutes to containment breach, the AI reminded them. Lisa's scanner beeped urgently. Power readings are off the charts. The Exilarian crystals are feeding the fire somehow. She paused, studying the data. It's almost like the fire is learning, adapting to our attempts to fight it. From the safety of the control room, Zixtal's voice came through their comms, filled with concern and confusion. I do not understand. Our historical records show that humans were the last species to develop spaceflight. Your technology is considered basic, yet you alone can function in these conditions. How is this possible? Daniel smiled as he worked to set up a cooling barrier. Humans didn't start with spaceships, Zixtal. We started with fire. While other species ran from it, we learned to use it. Every human civilization began around a campfire. It's true, Lisa added, adjusting her equipment. Fire shaped us. We learned to cook with it, to stay warm, to work metal. We even learned to fight it with fire, setting controlled burns to stop forest fires. Every other species saw fire as only a destroyer. They reached Section 14, where the main power conduits fed into the antimatter storage area. The heat here was intense enough to warp the metal walls. Their suits were holding, but just barely. 7 minutes to containment breach, the AI updated. Through the station's windows, they could see more escape pods launching. The evacuation was proceeding well, thanks to the extra time they were buying. On their comms, they could hear the alien crew members discussing their actions in tones of disbelief. The humans are still in there. They should have died from heat shock by now. How can their primitive suits withstand such conditions? Daniel focused on his work, remembering his training from Earth. Lisa, remember what they taught us about oil well fires, about how sometimes you have to think differently about the problem. She nodded inside her helmet. You're thinking about using the station's systems against the fire, like how we used explosives to put out those oil fires. Exactly. These aliens have amazing technology, but they never learn to really fight fire. They just try to contain it or run from it. Their conversation was interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the station. Warning lights flashed as new alarms joined the cacophony. The plasma fire had reached a critical system, and part of the artificial gravity began to fail. Daniel and Lisa activated their magnetic boots, staying firmly attached to the floor, while loose equipment floated around them. Even in zero gravity, they continued their work, their movements practiced and precise. Your species continues to surprise us, Zixtal commented through the comms. Our scientists believed that only automated systems could handle such emergencies. We never considered that biological beings could function under these conditions. That's because your species evolved to survive by running away from danger, Lisa explained as she worked. Humans evolved to overcome it. We're not fearless. We're just stubborn. 6 minutes to containment breach. Daniel finished setting up their modified equipment. Years of fighting fires on Earth had taught humans that sometimes you had to improvise, to use whatever tools were available. Now they were applying those same principles to alien technology and plasma fires. You know what the real difference is, Daniel said as they prepared their counterattack against the fire. Other species see fire as a force of pure destruction. Humans, we learned to see it as a tool. Sometimes dangerous, yes, but also useful. Just like anything else in nature, it's not good or bad. It's all in how you understand it and work with it. A massive explosion rocked the station as another power conduit burst. Daniel and Lisa braced themselves against the nearest wall, their magnetic boots fighting to keep them grounded as artificial gravity continued to fluctuate. The blast had come from the chemical storage facility, adding new dangers to their already desperate situation. 5 minutes to containment breach, the AI announced, its voice somehow managing to sound even more urgent. Daniel. Lisa called out, her voice tight with concern. The chemical storage facility. The fires reached it. These readings. She shook her head inside her helmet. I've never seen anything like this. Through the reinforced windows, they could see new colors joining the plasma fire. Angry reds and sickly greens as alien chemicals reacted with the flames. The fire was changing, growing stronger as it consumed the stored materials. Station structural integrity at 30%, the AI added. Predicted total failure in 28 minutes. Daniel studied the holographic display showing the fire's spread. The pattern was all wrong. Normal fires, even plasma fires, didn't behave this way. Then he noticed something in the wreckage of the Xilarian laboratory. Lisa, look at this. He pointed to a partially melted device. That's not a normal energy converter. The design is different. Lisa scanned the device, her eyes widening at the readings. It's experimental tech. They were trying to create a new type of energy matrix. She looked up at Daniel. That's why our normal methods aren't working. This isn't just a plasma fire. It's being fed by an unstable energy field. Another explosion shook the station. More warning lights flashed across their displays as systems continued to fail. The fire was spreading faster now, moving in ways that defied their experience and training. 4 minutes to containment breach. Chief Sullivan's voice crackled through their comms. Carter, Martinez, the last escape pods are launching. You need to get out now. That's an order. But Daniel had noticed something else. The way the fire moved when it interacted with the station's atmospheric systems gave him an idea. It was dangerous, probably crazy, but they were out of options. Chief, he responded, we found the source. It's an experimental Xilarian device. Their energy matrix is unstable. That's what's feeding the fire. All the more reason to evacuate. Amanda insisted. We can't fight something we don't understand. Lisa had caught on to Daniel's thinking. But we do understand fire, she said. Even this kind. Look at how it reacts to the atmospheric changes. In the control room, Zixtol was monitoring their vital signs. Your body temperatures are approaching dangerous levels. Your suits cannot withstand much more. The suits were designed by aliens who fear fire, Daniel said, already moving toward the atmospheric control panel. But right now, that fear is clouding your judgment. Sometimes you need to stop running and face the fire head-on. Through their comms, they could hear the alien crew members arguing about the humans' actions. Some called them brave, others called them foolish. But Daniel knew the truth. They weren't being brave or foolish. They were being human. 3 minutes to containment breach. The station groaned again as more systems failed. The fire had almost reached the antimatter storage, and when it did, the entire station would be destroyed. Hundreds of escape pods were now visible through the windows, carrying the station's population to safety, thanks to the time Daniel and Lisa had bought them. Lisa, Daniel said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Remember that warehouse fire in Detroit? The one with the experimental fuel? She nodded, understanding in her eyes. When traditional methods failed, we had to think like the fire itself. She paused, studying the readings again. You think we can adapt that solution for this? We have to try. Humans have been adapting to new types of fires since we first captured flames in our caves. This is just another evolution of that same challenge. The station shuddered again as they prepared to implement their desperate plan. They had one chance to get it right. If they failed, there wouldn't be time for a second attempt. Daniel's hands moved quickly over the atmospheric control panel while Lisa reprogrammed their equipment. Neither of them spoke about the fact that they were almost certainly going to die if their plan failed. They had accepted that possibility the moment they chose to stay behind. 2 minutes to containment breach, the AI reminded them. The plan is insane, Zixtel said through the comms, using the atmospheric systems to create a controlled explosion. It goes against every safety protocol we have. That's exactly why it might work, Lisa replied, finishing her modifications. Your safety protocols were written by species that fear fire. We're going to use that fire against itself. Daniel remembered fighting oil well fires on Earth, how they had used explosions to steal oxygen from the flames. This was the same principle, just on a much larger scale, and with alien technology they barely understood. 1 minute, 45 seconds to containment breach. Working together, they began rerouting power from the failing systems. The station's atmospheric controls were designed to maintain perfect conditions for multiple alien species. Now they were going to use those same systems to create a massive pressure wave. All emergency crews have evacuated, Chief Sullivan reported. You're the only living beings left on the station. Please, there's still time to reach the last escape pod. If this fire reaches the antimatter storage, the explosion will damage or destroy half the escape pods before they reach safe distance, Daniel said as he worked. We have to stop it here. Lisa connected their modified equipment to the atmospheric systems. Years of fighting fires had taught them both to trust their instincts, to understand fire as an entity that could be outsmarted rather than just fought. 1 minute to containment breach. The fire had nearly reached the antimatter storage area. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the flames changing color again as they consumed more of the station's systems. The heat was so intense that parts of the walls were beginning to melt. Ready, Lisa announced, her finger hovering over the activation switch. If we time this wrong. We won't, Daniel said firmly. Remember your training. Fire is just another force of nature. It follows rules, even alien fire like this. Their suits were barely functioning now, their cooling systems pushed far beyond their design limits. Both humans were sweating heavily inside their helmets, but their hands remained steady. 30 seconds to containment breach. Now, Daniel shouted. Lisa hit the switch. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the station's atmospheric systems began their carefully programmed sequence. They were creating a vacuum in specific sections while overpressurizing others. Warning, the AI announced. Catastrophic atmospheric system failure detected. Emergency protocols bypassed. The aliens watching from the control room of a nearby rescue ship fell silent as they observed the humans' desperate plan unfold. None of them had ever considered using atmospheric systems as a weapon against fire. 15 seconds to containment breach. The pressure differential reached its peak. Daniel and Lisa held onto their anchor points as the station groaned around them. The fire seemed to sense what was coming. It pulled back slightly, as if confused by the changing conditions. Now comes the tricky part, Lisa said, her voice tense but controlled. Daniel nodded and activated the final sequence. Multiple emergency bulkheads slammed shut, creating a series of contained sections. Then, in a carefully controlled chain reaction, they released the built-up pressure. The explosion that followed was like nothing anyone had ever seen in space. The pressure wave shot through the station's corridors at incredible speed, followed by a rush of oxygen-depleted air. The plasma fire, caught in this artificial storm, began to flicker and die. 5 seconds to containment breach. For one terrible moment, it seemed like their plan had failed. The fire continued to burn, reaching for the antimatter storage with its last strength. Then suddenly, it vanished, snuffed out by the same forces that had fed it. The station's AI paused for a moment, as if unsure how to process what had just happened. Then it spoke. Containment breach averted. Fire extinction confirmed. 3 weeks after the incident, Daniel and Lisa stood in front of the Galactic Council. The huge chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of spacefaring species, all gathered to discuss the events aboard Orbital Hub 7. The station had survived, though it would need extensive repairs. Daniel felt strange in his formal uniform after spending so many years in firefighting gear. Next to him, Lisa seemed equally uncomfortable with all the attention. They were firefighters, not politicians or heroes. They had simply done their job. The council leader, a tall Varax elder, addressed the chamber. Never in our recorded history has any species willingly faced such danger. The humans not only stayed behind, but found a way to defeat a fire that our best minds thought unbeatable. Chief Sullivan stepped forward to present her report. The recordings from Daniel and Lisa's helmet cameras played on the giant screens, showing their desperate fight against the plasma fire. The alien council members watched in amazement as the humans worked through conditions their own species considered unsurvivable. We have always viewed human technology as primitive, the council leader continued. We saw their reliance on combustion engines and chemical rockets as signs of an underdeveloped civilization. We were wrong. Their relationship with fire is not a weakness. It is their greatest strength. The chamber erupted in discussion. Many of the alien representatives were still struggling to understand why any species would choose to stay and fight rather than run from danger. It went against everything their evolution had taught them. Zixtal, who had been promoted for his role in the incident, stepped up to speak. I watched these humans save our station. They did not use advanced technology or complex AI systems. They used understanding gained through thousands of years of facing fire on their home world. They used courage that their species learned in ancient times, huddled around the first campfires. Daniel looked out at the gathered aliens and remembered all the times humans had been dismissed as primitive or underdeveloped. The aliens had mastered space travel centuries before Earth's first rocket, but they had never mastered fire the way humans had. The council leader raised a hand for silence. In light of these events, the council has reached a decision. We will establish the first human emergency response training academy. All stations and ships in galactic space will now be required to have human firefighters as part of their emergency crews. Lisa squeezed Daniel's hand as the announcement was made. They had not just saved a station. They had opened a new chapter in human-alien relations. Furthermore, the council leader continued, we ask that Daniel Carter serve as the Academy's chief instructor. His experience and understanding will be vital in teaching other species how to face their fears. After the ceremony, as they walked through the council station's corridors, they passed groups of alien youngsters who looked at them with something like awe. Word of their actions had spread throughout the galaxy, becoming almost legendary. It's strange, Lisa said quietly. All these advanced species, and they never understood what every human child learns, that running from fire just makes it stronger. Sometimes you have to stand and fight. Daniel nodded, watching an alien child try to mimic a firefighter's stance. We never thought our primitive past would be so valuable. Every campfire our ancestors built, every forge they created, every fire they fought. It was all preparing us for this. Back on Earth, applications for space firefighting programs had skyrocketed. Humans, once seen as newcomers to galactic civilization, were now recognized as essential members of any space station crew. Their unique ability to face and fight fire had earned them a special place among the stars. As they prepared to return to their duties, Daniel thought about all the future firefighters who would follow in their footsteps. Humans would continue to run into danger while others ran away, would face their fears while others froze. It wasn't because they were fearless or reckless. It was because they understood something that their alien friends were only now beginning to learn. Fire, like any force in the universe, could be mastered. But first, you had to be willing to face it.